Welcome to Beyond the Envelope. I got my guest today, Brandon with QXO. Brandon, can you introduce yourself?
Yeah, Brandon Pontius. I've been with QXO, formerly Atlas Supply, for 12 years now.
Excellent. And we got Blake from Henry Company. Blake, please introduce yourself.
Blake Casebeer. I'm with Henry. I've been with Henry now for about 3 years now.
Excellent. Yeah. And I'm Bill. I'm CEO at Pacific Construction Solution, and I'm honored to have both you guys here and talk about envelopes, right?
Yeah.
We've been doing envelopes our whole lives and our careers, and something I'm passionate about, and I'm excited to improve the industry with thorough and thoughtful conversations like these.
I'm excited about it.
Yeah. How do you feel about installing your products without a roof on the building?
It has to be on. That's what I'm supposed to say. It has to be on. But yeah, that's a whole nother level. The getting onto a project where the roof isn't installed yet, and you have we live in the Pacific Northwest. How often do we have random rainstorms? And then on top of that, a random atmospheric river. If you don't have a roof on, you have water flowing from the interior of the building out. It specifically says on all of our documentation, no negative side water, bulk water, which basically means you can't have water going in from the behind the substrate, behind the material. Without a roof on, how do you make sure that doesn't happen?
Come on, Blake. I've been doing this for 20 years. I put WRB in windows before roofs all day long.
Oh, it's a constant conversation, but the easy part is when you get out onto a job site and you can tug a little bit on a self-adhered membrane and it just peels right off of a completely saturated substrate, or you have a liquid applied looks like it's got a second-degree burn because of the amount of blisters that it has, and you go up and you pop one of them and water just gushes out. Normally that's easy to point out as hey, I can't guarantee any of this now. This isn't going to be warrantable. And all of a sudden, they start looking at each other. So I just wait, not warrantable. Uh-oh, how are we going to have this conversation?
And those problems are avoidable with one phone call.
One phone call.
Yep. And what happens if water gets trapped between a plywood substrate and a non-permeable self-adhered membrane?
That is, it has to be able to work its way out, and you have something that's not allowing it to work its way out. So basically, you could come back. I think we had an experience with this where they allowed moisture to get in behind the substrate. You come back and you cut it open 6 months later, it's still got moisture trapped in there. And that moisture is eventually, that becomes mold or rot.
If it's impermeable and the inside's finished, is it ever gonna dry up?
If you have an environment to the interior of the building that allows for that moisture to move and dry, eventually it should work. But there is no telling how long that will be, and it depends wholly on where it is in the wall. Because if it's below, say, the interior floor, and thus trapped in between, a substrate that doesn't allow for that moisture to either move out or for the air to flow, then no, it's not. It's going to be trapped in there, and it'll rot it out.
Yeah. And being a material manufacturer, and looking at plans, working with architects, and going through all the specs, everything is perfect on a flat sheet of paper, right? Mm-hmm. Or on the screen, right? Every line's perfect. The substrates are perfect. It's a perfect world on a plan set. What needs to happen after approved submittals and before pre-installation, in your opinion, to make a successful installation of some of your products? Like, what do those steps look like?
Well, I think most contractors are used to just kind of getting to it and getting after it and getting onto the job site. But I think one of the things that the top contractors will do is get us involved with reviewing the drawings, making sure that they match the details. Because, for example, architects will have what's called a basis of design. And the basis of design is dependent upon the manufacturer that they chose to design that particular system around. And I think it's critical to get whichever manufacturer you've decided to partner with onto looking over the drawings with you in order to determine whether or not their particular manufacturer requirements are being met by what the architect designed. There's also nuances in any project that maybe create difficulties or the manufacturer rep has seen cause a headache for other contractors, and being able to have those discussions and going over, you know, the like I said, nuances of your particular project, because none are the same. No project is the same as the next. Having those conversations is critical to be able to work out some of those kinks.
Yeah, how about mock-ups?
Mock-ups, I think that is definitely where you get to put the to put the rubber to the road, per se. You definitely have the conversations, but then getting out and being on site and getting your hands dirty and making sure to see how it plays out at a 3D level is definitely critical.
Yeah, well, I mean, you just said something super critical. You said architect will pick a basis of design, but typically there'll be, you know, Henry's approved, and there's Suprema approved, and then there's Vapor Shield approved, and then there's, you know, Protecto approved, and everybody's system's a little bit different, right? And how they design and the compatibility. So my experience is a mock-up will come and we'll get all the parties on, and we'll just sit there and play with the materials and play with and usually send out a confirming RFI or something like that.
Yeah, you definitely, when you're out there kind of playing with it, per se, I mean, you're following what the drawings say, but each manufacturer has varying allowances and things that they're going to require, and Brandon probably knows more about that than I do with regards to some of the other manufacturers, because I tend to focus, you know, mostly on Henry alone, but there's various allowances per manufacturer that getting onto the site and playing with the material, you definitely can figure out what changes you have to make to the drawings and the details based off of those, you know, various requirements.
Yeah, and the project goals.
Yeah.
Brandon, my next one, I want to bring you in on this one as well. When it comes to pre-construction and mock-ups, how much experience do you have in the field bringing materials and supporting contractors just in the exploratory stage?
Quite a bit from a consultative standpoint. Never been a field worker myself, so I don't have that experience going for me. I've been involved in enough projects that I'm confident with material in my hands, but oftentimes I'm consulted by someone like your company. This spec has numerous manufacturers, and which way should we go? So it becomes a collaborative effort, I think, at that point to determine which line of manufacturers' products to use and how to do that. And as a distributor, I don't really get to have the final say of how to install a system. You know, we would go to a manufacturer and say, how do you want this detail to look? I think this, I've seen this, I believe this sequencing to be sound building science, but I need a manufacturer support to help me to help you in that scenario. So oftentimes I'm helping on the site, but I have to rely on that collaborative effort of the manufacturer being involved as well. And that's where I think that pre-con you mentioned earlier is so important for everyone to be on the same page.
So, Blake, you've seen how projects get put together and how forensically the materials need to be compatible, right, in order to work with other systems below grade, TPO roofing. From some of your experience, what happens when a manufacturer is not involved, right, with pre-con or with installation, and what are some of the risks and what are some of the fails you've seen on site in your years?
I'd say it's kind of twofold. There is the cost to the contractor for bringing me on late can be extreme, just based off of the fact that other contractors that are installing these other areas know that there are certain extra steps that are needed at times. So, for example, there's you had mentioned when we're transitioning from the wall to the foundation. There are manufacturers that have products for the foundation that don't accept the majority of wall membranes, like a Henry's membrane. And so there's extra steps that are required in order for that transition to go off without, you know, causing a chemical reaction. That's, to your point of what can happen, it's a chemical reaction. You can have You can have something where the membrane of like a Henry's material, one of our self-adhered membranes, liquefies and no longer is going to work. I mean, it's no longer in its sheet form. It's no longer creating a continuous air barrier. And so these other contractors, if we don't have a pre-con and we don't have a discussion between the air barrier installer and the general contractor, sometimes that other contractor can get off the job site and be done and gone and have no responsibility now for dealing with that transition of the wall to the foundation. So then who gets left holding the bag? Who gets left having to pay for that? Who gets left having to deal with the extra detailing that's required there? And it ends up more often than not falling on the installer of the air barrier. So having those pre-cons is crucial in order to make sure that, you know, nobody's left blindsided. And I tend to find that particular detail, as well as like you had mentioned, a roof to wall transition, is commonly missed. It is something where the everyday contractor assumes that the architect is detailing it in such a way that they don't need to take many extra steps. They just need to install the product that the architect wrote down. And that's just not the case. There's extra steps, extra products, sometimes not even in their details, that are going to be required, because if you don't have those extra products and those extra steps, you will have a chemical reaction. So to your point, you mentioned TPO. A big one is PVC. Mm-hmm. PVC mixed with an asphaltic membrane will liquefy the asphaltic membrane and leach the plasticizers out of the PVC, and it becomes brittle. And the membrane of the SBS membrane, or the asphaltic membrane, it runs down and out. It basically is no longer stays in position, and neither of the membranes is going to work anymore. So that whole transition, the area where those are interacting, is now useless. So yeah, when dealing with those transitions and having those conversations, it's critical to know how the products marry to each other.
Yeah, I think I think you hit it spot on. I mean, that's something that just not everybody has a keen eye for, and having those conversations early rather than, you know, in your field and you reach to put it on and the consultant says, hey, no, or worse, right? Mm-hmm. Somebody does an inspection and half the building's installed, and then you got to come back and take things off, and then who's holding the bag there? It's like, as a contractor, they're going to say, I followed the detail. And then as a general contractor, you know, they're in a tough spot.
Yeah, definitely. It's interesting to find out who takes on the responsibility of fixing those issues when they do come. Because I can definitely tell you that I get phone calls. I try to ask the question early, but getting the phone call of a panicked voice on the other line of, oh my gosh, what's going on with your product? What did we do wrong? It normally means somebody's paying money.
Yep, yeah, and you could see that with sealants too. Yeah, interior air barrier sealants, exterior sealants. Yeah,
definitely.
Yeah, it comes down to, you know, whose job is it, and I'd like to think we're all trying to build a good building, so it's everyone's job to be responsible for the quality. Contractually, we might be able to tie an individual company to that particular scope, and now the weight's really on them. But on the front end, it's, you know, the holy grail for a manufacturer of many products is, let's get the roof, the wall, the below grade. It's all one manufacturer. What a project win. But also for the consultant, GC, the subcontractor, you have one or two main points of contact from one manufacturer. They know their details, they know their transitions, but on a lot of jobs, for pricing, or a rep did a good job in one architect's firm and vice versa, different manufacturers. So you get these buildings that have manufacturer one on the below grade, manufacturer two on the walls, manufacturer three on the roof, and they're all focused on just getting their scopes done. So whose job is it now? Consultant, quality manager at the GC, someone has to police that. My below grade contractor's leaving and we never discussed transition. My WRB contractor's leaving and didn't discuss transition, compatibility, sequencing, all that. So it really is a big joint effort, but not always actually being executed that way.
Yeah, well, I mean, that begs a question. How important do you think it is to use one manufacturer for below grade walls, roof, and how important do you think it's to use one? Ideally, would it be beneficial to use one contractor to do all three?
I think it's an opinionated question.
Yeah.
I don't think it's a black and white answer.
It's
You'd like
opinion,
you'd
yeah.
like to just say yes,
Mhm.
but why wouldn't you want, doing work on your house? I want one person that's doing everything who I know and I trust and they communicate well. But whoever the decision maker is and whatever they're motivated by, whether it's dollars, scheduling, all the factors you have when picking a contractor or a manufacturer, there's so many reasons to make your decision. Oftentimes you get these projects with 4 different manufacturers that, someone like a Henry, for example, has a full envelope offering. They look at those like, I see a solution to use my products everywhere, but that ship has already sailed. This job is locked in per specs. So we'll just do the best we can with the scope we have and own where we own. And hopefully, try to set up the next scope for success and not, sabotage it. I don't see sabotage happen very often. I don't mean to say it's common, but oftentimes it's my stuff's down, my warranty's good. Whatever you're doing next is that manufacturer's asphalt, butyl, their call. My stuff's good.
Tell me about when it looks good on paper and when the site conditions just aren't acceptable for a WRB product, and how to make a transition and how to pick the best product and how we navigated that scenario together.
Yeah, that was an interesting situation. So, various types of products require certain levels of detailing, and certain substrates will be better for certain membranes than for others.
Mm-hmm.
And the substrate at the time that we were working with was perfect for a fluid applied product initially on paper. To your point, on paper it was great. But when we got to the job site, they had the way that the substrate had been installed, there was going to be a significant need for more detailing that wasn't accounted for and shouldn't have had to have been accounted for. And that extra detailing was misalignment, but for the most part was, the knots in the wood that were supposed to be to the interior that were now to the exterior.
Okay.
That amount of extra detailing is extremely expensive, and nobody had accounted for it, right? No, and so the all of a sudden you have panic at every level. And I think the way that it got dealt with that was best was a conversation got had with everybody, especially the architect. And the conversation had to be had where you explain to the architect, look, the mistake's already been made. The cost to fix a mistake is in some cases just as expensive as the extra work that was going to have to be done. Let's talk about solutions. And one of those solutions that we had determined was to change what the membrane was entirely to a sheet applied good, because then you don't need to pre-treat those knots. That massively reduced the amount of cost that was going to be coming up due to this mistake that was made on site. Now, maybe if there was a pre-con meeting like we had talked about earlier, maybe we would have been able to catch some of these errors. Framing being off. I mean, how often do you get onto a job site and the framing is perfect? I mean, that's rare.
Very
so it's
rare.
not, it's not like you're going to be able to work that one out.
Mm-hmm.
But in this particular instance, maybe we wouldn't have been able to catch this because installing the substrate backwards is, you don't normally feel like you have to have that conversation in a pre-con. Certain things you think are just, part of the part of the general understanding. But in this particular instance, it did happen. We did have this odd situation to overcome. And by communicating with the architect, who could then go and communicate with the owner, hey, an issue happened. What you paid for is now going to be changing. But here's the reason why. The manufacturer supports the decision. The consultant, I believe, supported the decision at that particular point. And understood the nuance as to why we had to do it. And ultimately, we were able to kind of do football term, a sudden change. You know,
Yeah.
we had to adjust rapidly, and it ended up working out just in that, and to some degree, that shift. But that's not. I think that's different than just the wet substrate as well. I think that was another issue that we had to deal with that comes up on jobs. But as far as the need to change membrane and the what's on paper versus what was there when we got onto the job site, that's how you need to adjust sometimes.
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, moving forward, everybody, like you said, has ulterior motives, right? So the superintendent, the general contractor superintendent, he's got a different motive than the quality control advisor for the general contractor and so forth, and the project manager, right? They're all looking after different interests.
Mm-hmm.
How important is a pre-installation checklist, right? A pre-install checklist, and communicating that with that superintendent and with that framing subcontractor before they get 80% of the building done and realize it's wrong.
I think the best example for this is our is other systems that we have that have a higher requirement of warranty. They require a checklist, a pre-install checklist, in order to get this more, I guess not cumbersome, but more all-encompassing and manufacturer-backed system. Mm-hmm. There is a need for a pre-install checklist, or not pre-install, but a pre-con checklist, basically, and a need for a pre-con meeting. And they have a list of all of the individuals that need to be involved in that meeting. So when the manufacturer has more on the line, they do require it completely. It's not even an option. So when the manufacturer isn't requiring it, and it's not a higher, a more robust warranty, having the contractor make the decision to make that a requirement, I would definitely back that 100%.
Yeah, I agree with that.
I think that's the best practice to, if you're an installing contractor, have that practice in your own company. Stay in touch with your manufacturers, because I think regardless which system you use, sheet applied, mechanically fastened, liquid applied, they all exist and have been through the appropriate testing for their certification. So if done properly, theoretically they all give you the warranty you desire. But every step along the way for each manufacturer could be different. So often overlooked by a consultant or a GC, or not overlooked, but I understand my project and my wall system, my contractor take care of it, it's fine. Sure, but you're used to manufacturer X that's liquid applied. Manufacturer Y might have a different way they handle that detail. They might both work, but you want this manufacturer's warranty. Bring them in early on so they can go before the job starts and say, hey, usually you guys do 3 inches from the rough opening, we want to see 4. That one little detail seems so small, 1 inch, insignificant, but 500 windows, an extra inch on every one after the fact rather than before the fact. Your cost from adding an inch early on is greatly different than your cost doing it retroactively. So it all goes back to collaboration. Manufacturers may require it, but if it's already done, now you're trying to find a way to still get a warranty for your contractor after the fact. So even when it's required, the warranty may still happen, but the process from mistake to warranty can be much smoother if the mistake's caught early on, like mock-ups you mentioned. Find your problems on your mock-up. Don't find them on the building.
I mean, that's an excellent point. Brandon, I mean, you have so much knowledge, and you've been in the industry for 12 years, right? Working with these products, moving these products, watching them, attending mock-ups, supporting contractors. What's your philosophy in supporting, your clients, and how do you go about to help them achieve their goals, and what value do you provide, and can you just kind of speak to that?
Yeah, I mean, I could go on for a long time about that. So to try
Yeah.
to make it simpler, I think it's,
In a nutshell.
yeah, I try to meet each contractor I work with where they're at,
Yeah.
where they're coming from. I don't want to walk into a new relationship assuming what you need, what you want. Are you motivated by this, motivated by that, price, relationship, service, combination of all of them? And being a distributor, I'm not married to one manufacturer, which sometimes is a blessing and sometimes it's a curse, depending on each job. So I hope to get to a point with my clients where we have an open line of communication. It's not just, hey, we're going to come buy this, give me the best price possible, because of course I want to sell stuff. I want it to be, hey, we're up against this job. We have a few options for manufacturer. What do you think? And now I have to play a little careful, having multiple masters to serve, but also what do you want? Do you as a contractor, specific to WRBs, do you like liquid applied? Because if you love liquid applied, I'm not going to try and push you to use a sheet applied membrane, or vice versa. Some contractors do not like to work with rolled peel and stick membranes or don't like to spray liquid. So there's a first step there is I don't want to assume what do you prefer. And that might completely eliminate a manufacturer that doesn't have that option. And now we're down to your preference of sheet applied versus liquid applied. We're down to 2 or 3 manufacturers. And I'll just tell it like it is. Do you like to prime? Some manufacturers require primer, some don't. That could save you a lot of money to not have to prime a 50,000 square foot building before you install membrane. But just because a manufacturer doesn't require primer doesn't necessarily mean they shouldn't require primer. It could be a sales pitch in the right room at the right time to an architect getting specified, and now we're primer free. There's so many nuances to WRB specifically with primer, no primer, liquid applied, sheet applied. It really comes down to having that conversation with your contractor of what do you prefer to do and what is your crew good at? Is your crew experienced in this type of installation? If not, are you interested in becoming better at fluid applied? And then we'll partner with manufacturers to train them on that process. The only way to get better is to practice it and try it, right? So I try to let the contractors steer that conversation to see where they're at. And as long as they're receptive to my feedback, I'll try and see where they can optimize their operation. But that goes back to the same conversation about pre-con collaboration with manufacturers. It has to be a two-way street. I can't just sit in a contractor's office and tell them, this is the most efficient, profitable thing to do. Because it's an opinionated question. It's different for each person.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and QXO has been a great partner in that. You guys hosted us. We had about 50 people inside your warehouse, and Blake was doing a presentation on liquid applied, right? And those interactions and those supports uplift industry and make people better at installing products, and kind of aligns everybody.
To add to that, I think that goes a long way to an owner or a general contractor as well. If you come to the table with something you see in the specification and you don't like any of them, maybe you want to offer a substitution, or it's an approved equal, but it's approved equal, but we like the basis of design. Well, a contractor can now come to that general contractor. An installing contractor can come to the general contractor and say, we partner really well with this manufacturer, and I'd like to have a meeting with you. And so now you're getting an architect, consultant, or a GC to recognize that a specialty contractor has a good relationship with a manufacturer who supports their quality of install. And that partnership can be huge. And they can see that, specialty contractor isn't just making this up. We've given project examples of how they've been a successful partnership. And now you get that job with that GC, and what you start is that GC, that specialty contractor, and that manufacturer have now done 2 or 3 or 4 jobs together. And so the next time you have a job where you have different manufacturers for different scopes, transitions below grade to WRB, there's a proven track record of this person isn't just giving me a low price. This person isn't just a salesperson. we know that these people are good partners to partner with. They're going to give us the most watertight building they can because they care about proper communication and installation methods.
Perfect. I mean, what's in the price, right? That's a good question. When a general contractor is sitting there and the project manager's got all the bid leveling, and he sees WRB contractor 1, 2, and 3, and they all got numbers at the bottom of the line, right? What's in the price? I mean, in your opinion, looking at contractors and looking at their products and what they install and how they operate, is there a difference between WRB install contractor 1, 2, and 3?
Depending who those 1, 2, and 3 are, absolutely. Yeah. Goes back to that motivation piece. Who is the person making the decision at that general contractor level to hire those specialty contractors? Is that, we'll call it a project manager, looking at price 1, 2, and 3, and automatically taking the lowest price because they want to save money? Hopefully they don't get burned. We don't want anyone to have, a failing building.
Roll the dice.
Roll the dice and find out. And sometimes it works out. But oftentimes, the lowest price being drastically low should be a red flag. If the other 2 or 3 contractors are right on the same ballpark, but you have one just way down here, if I'm the decision maker, I'm going, why is that so cheap? They missed something. So I think it really just depends on the motivation of that general contractor. If they've been burned enough times from that scenario, they're not taking that contractor at the very bottom price unless they have a meeting with them fully laying out that they've covered every scope and they simply just have a good price. Great. But more often than not, the lowest price on the bid sheet that's way too low ends up costing you more in the long run. You're doing so many change orders for missed scope. Your superintendents on the job site as a GC are working 14-hour days to keep up and keep an eye on this sub who's not meeting par, and you're turning over ultimately either subpar install at the end, or so much change order work was done in the process that low price became the high price. And on the flip side, you pick the highest price as long as it's not absurdly high. You have that meeting with that specialty contractor, vet your price to me. Why are you so much higher? Well, here's my quality program. We work with our manufacturers and all of our field crews daily, weekly, whatever the cadence might be. Here's my track record of projects we've done with this manufacturer. Here's, if we miss a detail here and there, we're not change ordering you. We're going to own that we missed that and come out and fix it. Cost you no extra money. We'll take care of that. And I think that project manager or decision maker from the GC, I think that comes with time and experience. Very few people, I think, enter the world of what we do and just day one know everything, right? I mean, no one knows everything, obviously, but everyone has to fall on their face and learn lessons the hard way. And so when you get to a more seasoned group of people to work with, they've seen the failures and successes. They're familiar with the price is not always an indicator of the quality.
Yeah, seen this movie before.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Okay. Blake, that brings up a juicy one. So Brandon was mentioning, 3 types of WRB, and you got your obviously mechanically a fastened WRB. You've got your stick membranes that are self-adhered. You got your liquid applied. You got a couple categories of liquid applied. You got your STPE. You got your acrylics. What is the decision factor, and what are the pros and cons, and why would somebody select each one of those 3 WRB types?
It's a good question. I think there's a couple of different layers to that. So there's the cost layer. There is, and then there's the performance layer, I guess, are the 2 that are the big 2. Mechanically fastened air barriers are universally less expensive than the other 2 options. So
Product-wise and install-wise?
Install-wise, I would need to. I think you would be more of the professional responder to that one, I guess, or how would I phrase that?
They go up faster.
They go up a lot faster, yeah. And so in that regard, I think it's all around. It's a less expensive product. Now, is
9-foot rolls?
Yeah, is it a lesser product? I mean, that is in the eye of the beholder, but I would say that if you were to ask a consultant, and they had an owner asking them, hey, we want the best product possible, I think they would push them more often than not, if cost wasn't a factor, to either a sheet applied good or a fluid applied. Now, why would you pick a fluid applied or a sheet applied? That's a great question as well. Now, you mentioned chemistry, but so we'll get to that second. Let's start with sheet versus fluid. That depends more often than not on the substrate and how much detailing is going to be involved in having to install that particular material. So a very uneven surface that has a lot of different seams or various areas that require detailing from a fluid applied or pre-detailing for a fluid applied might be better for a sheet applied good. Whereas, if you have a whole wall that has no extra detailing needed, you're probably going to get a better performance out of a fluid applied. So in that regard, I think the difference between sheet applied and fluid applied tends to lean more towards, what does that particular project, what is that area, what would you get the best performance out of and with the least amount of excess detailing. Now, chemistry-wise, that comes into, everybody has their opinions on which chemistries work better with what. But as far as chemical compatibility goes, there are choices made on any given job based off of the other areas of the building that are already decided upon. Now, no air barrier, there's very few air barriers that you would find that has anything more than what's called a material warranty. The heavier warranties on any given project are the roof and the foundation, and the pre-applied waterproofing or foundation waterproofing. They tend to be longer and require more of the manufacturer. So we'll tend to lean more to them, default to them. We don't want to cause their warranty to no longer be upheld, So transitioning to those particular materials, there's certain products that transition easier than other products. Like we had talked about an asphaltic and a PVC. So when you're deciding what you're going to use for your air barrier, is it interacting a lot with these other materials? So that might be a determining factor as far as why you choose a specific chemistry. When the architect is designing the building, they have to take into account a multitude of factors. A lot of people call what we have an air barrier. Yeah, it's meant to keep air out, but why is it keeping air out? Because air carries moisture. You can't separate the two. There is no, you can consider it dry air to some degree, but moisture is going to be working and traveling with air and heat and cold and all those things. So depending on what environment you're in, so whether you're in a dry environment or whether you're in a humid environment, and whether you're heating more during the year or cooling more during the year, will determine what type of air barrier you need. So for example, in the Pacific Northwest, we heat a lot more during the year. Heating creates moisture. When you're creating that moisture, it needs to work its way out of the building. So you need a permeable membrane. Whereas if you were to go to a place like, say, Miami has a very humid temperature and they're cooling the majority of the year. When you're cooling, that's drying. That's going to be drying out your interior. And moisture likes to go to where it's dry. It wants to try and fight its way there. So if you were to use a permeable membrane in Miami, the water from the exterior, the humidity, would push its way through your wall and end up inside your wall. And you would have rot and mold and all those things. So if you go to a place like Miami, they're using a non-permeable membrane. That helps determine as well whether or not you're wanting to use, what type of sheet applied good. Just at Henry's, we have the VP160 product is our permeable membrane. So that's why you see that way more here and you won't see it in Miami. Mm-hmm. In Miami, you're going to see one of our non-permeable membranes, like the SA or the Metalclad.
Yeah, I'm going to jump in right there because it's a great segue I've been waiting for you to touch on it and I interrupted you to take it from you. I think if we want to focus on liquid applied and sheet applied for why one over the other for many reasons you just mentioned, also constructability. And that could be a plethora of things as far as constructability. It could be the substrate being off, as we mentioned earlier, and less detailing being required with a sheet good. Or, you could come to me or your team could come to me and say, we're going to use this liquid applied product on this job. This job is on the waterfront in the Columbia River Gorge, and you want to spray where it's windy all the time. You'd be better off rolling a liquid on versus fighting a sheet good flapping in the wind or overspray hitting cars on the floor, on the ground. So constructability is often overlooked in the specification process because we see a product with a rating that we like on a building that'll take it. But where are you? Is your field crew going to be able to actually perform that work in that weather environment? Also, often overlooked is the controlled thickness of a material. So there's a standard perm rating requirement by ASTM. I'm not an ASTM nerd, so I couldn't tell you the number. But ASTM so-and-so requires a perm rating of at least 13, 14 to be qualified as a vapor permeable material. Great, we're 14 perms. We meet it. Okay, but if you're putting a liquid applied material on, that's 14 perms at 20 mils thick application. If you're putting it on twice as thick, because it is hard to control how thick you install a liquid. If you're putting it on twice as thick, you're cutting that breathability, that permeance rating in half. Versus a sheet good, depending which manufacturer you use, it's a fixed thickness, 20 mils, 30 mils, 40 mils. So the perm rating is the perm rating. Now, primer may take away from your perm rating a little bit, but we still know those numbers. If you're doing a liquid applied, you are checking with a mil gauge every square foot of that building to be confident how thick you are everywhere, which is not feasible. You're not going to slow down and check every single square foot. We're going to do an eye test. Can I see the name of the substrate through your material? It's probably too thin. If I can never see it anywhere, I'm wondering how thick you put it on. So that thickness, that controlled thickness, is a big reason why a lot of folks like sheet applied. I know my perm rating on a sheet applied product. On a liquid applied, unless we're checking every square foot, we think we know my perm rating.
Yeah, I mean, what kind of value does it, in order to be an expert, a true expert, you need to be able to influence, yourself. You need to be able to influence internal stakeholders, your team, and you need to be able to influence external stakeholders to kind of help you achieve your mission. When an envelope company takes you on as their partner, these are some of the things that the owner doesn't really understand. How often are you checking in with, let's say, Blake or other Henry reps or other manufacturer reps, and what's your relationship with the product manufacturers and the representatives?
I think it's a two-way question. I like to think it's strong. I hope they feel the same way.
Yeah.
I know we mutually respect each other and work well together, and I try to make that a point of emphasis for myself. It could be a delicate dance in terms of telling your manufacturing partner, hey, our specialty contractor not doing a very good install, not making the Henry name or the manufacturer so-and-so name look very good on this job. But also, my number one goal is to have a great relationship with my installing contractor. So I want to protect that person just like a manufacturer. That's who actually spends money with me, is the installing contractor. We want all other parties to like us and use our products, but our main interest is protecting our contractor, and part of that protecting the contractor is making sure that they're doing quality work. So I think it comes with time. I think you have enough good experiences, you got to have some bad ones to learn from, and it just starts to build. I don't like to think of myself as an expert in just 12 years. I know people that have 20, 30, 40 years who I've learned a lot from. And then being invited to something like this is a great example of, well, someone thinks I'm doing something right. I'm bringing value to somebody if I'm being invited to talk about it. And those experiences just add up over time. You go to a symposium in the industry, and you walk into a room full of architects and consultants and GCs, and people come over and talk to you of their own accord. It's like, oh, I seem to be making an impact in this industry because people come over and want to talk with me when I walk into these industry events. And you just build that up. And I think communication, open communication, I'll hammer that home. If one word leaves today's show, it's communication. Genuine, honest communication with all parties involved will eventually build you a network of people that, even if you don't know, at least they know you're going to be honest and say you don't know, and you're going to work to find the right answer.
So, piggybacking on that, a lot of jobs are super tight, right? We just did that 12-story on southeast, and I mean there was absolutely no laydown. How do you support your contractors when it comes to daily deliveries, tight sites, tough logistics plans, and how do you involve yourself?
Well, there's my personal experience. I have a small shop in southeast Portland, so we don't have a laydown yard either, but we do have a warehouse we can store materials in. And that's part of the selling point also when trying to pick a manufacturer to partner with your specialty contractor is, you don't have room on your job site. I don't stock this manufacturer. So I'm not going to be able to give you daily delivery service because I don't stock it. This product I do stock. So now it's a lot easier for me to be there on short notice every time you need me. Or if we're, again, pre-con, the earlier in the process we're talking, if I don't generally stock a product or that much of a product, but we're in communication beforehand, I can carve out a section of my warehouse to store those 5, 10, 15 pallets. Or if I don't have room for that, it's my job to make you feel comfortable with the idea of, I can't do 20 pallets, but we don't need to. You're not going to move that fast. I'm going to have 5, and I'm going to get you those 5 and have 5 more coming in right away. And mistakes happen, There's days where you're out of material and you're losing time on the job, and never looks good. Never fun to make that phone call when those mistakes happen. But that's the balance of distribution. A lot of manufacturers, not a lot, some might sell direct regularly or occasionally for huge volume competitive jobs where I can't even blame them. Just, you want an entire truckload delivered straight to the job site? Yeah, I guess do what you got to do. But for the most part, manufacturers rely on their distributors to have their products in-house when they need it. Because we're out there attacking the market. Now, I have multiple interests in manufacturers that I serve, but we partner well together. So he could be in Vancouver doing something while I'm in Salem doing something, and we call each other, I just sold some VP 160. I just sold some maybe SALT. Do you have stock? Yes, I do. Great, I'm going to send somebody your way. This meeting I had went great, and they need reassurance from an actual stocking distributor that I, the manufacturer, didn't just lie to them. It actually is in town. And so now we're starting a 3-way between a specialty contractor and a distributor with their manufacturing partner. So oftentimes, new manufacturers come to my company as a staple in the market for WRBs. Help us get our product in this market. We'll help you best we can, but you got to help yourself and get specifications first. It's the putting the cart before the horse situation. I'm not going to put a truckload of stock in my warehouse if you aren't getting jobs.
Yeah, understood. All right, well, that's going to wrap up this episode of Beyond the Envelope. I appreciate you, Blake, for coming out and making the time, and likewise, Brandon, I value our partnership. It's been an honor to work with you, and as we grow, I mean, strengthening these relationships is only more important, as well as you, Blake. We're getting more notice in the market, and we're putting more and more of your product up on the walls, and I only see that growing, and I look forward to continuing our relationship.
Same. Appreciate you having us.